This is the plaintiff, Stephanos. He says he brought his bike into the defendant's mom-and-pop bike shop, which has been there for over 40 years because he was having problems with his chain falling off. He paid the defendant to fix his rear axle. And when he went to ride the thing, the rear wheel locked up and he went flying over the handlebars. He broke his collarbone. It's all the defendant's fault. He's now out $1,902.07 in medical expenses and repairs. And he's suing for just that here, today. This is the defendant, Craig. He says his bicycle shop has been in his family for 60 years, and this guy takes the cake. He has no idea why the plaintiff crashed his bike. Maybe he hit a rock or something. The defendant says the plaintiff's suing him 2 years after this supposed crash, and there's no way it's his responsibility to pay him all this money. He's accused of botching up a bicycle.
All parties, please raise your right hands.
Welcome back to the People's Court. Next case on the docket. The plaintiff says that he brought his bike to this mom-and-pop bike shop, but the defendant botched the job, and as a result, he crashed his bike, fell off, and broke his shoulder. Now, the defendant claims he fixed the guy's bike properly and has no idea why he crashed and takes no responsibility. It's the case of your bike repair ain't jiffy.
Thank you, Douglas.
You're welcome.
Okay, Mr. Stephanos, you are suing Mr. Craig's bicycle shop for $1,902.07 in damages because, according to you, their faulty workmanship caused you to take a really nasty fall and you actually broke your collarbone?
That's correct.
Okay, tell me what happened.
I had an issue with my bicycle where the chain kept falling off. And so I decided to drop it off at the shop and give me an idea of what it would cost to repair.
And have you been to this shop before?
Yeah, I grew up in the neighborhood, so I've been a long time customer. I've bought many bicycles there.
Okay, how long has the business been in the neighborhood, Mr. Craig?
60 years.
60?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Did you start it?
No, my dad.
Okay. Yeah. I didn't think so,
1962.
Okay. All right. So go ahead, Mr. Stephanos. So you take it over to them because the chain kept falling off. Go on.
Right. And they let me know, there would be about $100, give or take, to repair it. So I said, go ahead. So I was supposed to pick up the bicycle, which I did. I had my wife drive me over to the shop, and the intention was to ride the bike back home. I'm not too far from the shop. And then I was told, I always ask what was replaced, and I was told that the rear skewer, aka the axle, was replaced.
Okay.
And I believe the derailleur, which is the component that shifts the chain in the rear of the bike.
Okay.
And also a chain, if I'm not mistaken.
Do we have a receipt from that day?
I do. It was provided.
Yeah.
As
Adjust derailleur, rear chain, rear. Can you explain to me what was done, Mr. Craig, by looking at this receipt?
Sure. Looks like a new derailleur was put on and a new cable was put on.
What's a cable?
That cable that runs from the shifter to the back activates the shifting. When you move the shifter, the cable moves the derailleur. And a rear skewer. The $9 is the piece that goes through the wheel that holds the wheel on.
All right, so what happens? You pick up the bike and what happens?
So I take the bicycle and just maybe not even a block away, I noticed that every time I push down my legs, I heard like a vibrating sound. So I looked down and I noticed that the rear wheel was tilting left to right. It wasn't stable. And so I immediately brought it back and I brought it, to Craig's attention, and he grabbed the bicycle and he brought it right back out, and he says, you're good to go. And I said, well, what did you do? He says, was something loose, or I just tightened something along those lines.
How did the bike ride when you rode it home?
It felt okay. So then it wasn't immediately the next day, but several days later on the 12th, it was October. It was a decent day, and I chose to. We took a ride with my family, me, my wife, and my children. Everybody on their own bicycles, separate bicycles. And just a couple of blocks away from the house, there's an incline. So I stood up on the bicycle and I started to pedal harder, so I can get up the hill. And with the initial, just as soon as I pushed the bike a little bit to get up the hill, what happened was the crank where you pedal, the part where you pedal, something locked in the drivetrain, somewhere between the crank, the chain, the rear axle. I don't know exactly what happened, but causing the bike to lock as if somebody, threw a pipe inside my tire. You know what I mean? That kind of, and with the momentum of my body coming down on the crank, that lifted me and threw me over the handlebars of the bike, and I landed on my shoulder and fractured my clavicle.
Fractured your clavicle. What do they do for a fractured clavicle? I think they just leave it alone, right? Like a rib?
It depends on, when I went to the hospital, I went to the emergency room, they said, if you're an athlete, which I'm not, or a model, which I'm not, and they said this is, a pretty standard fracture. It's not like the bone was, coming out of my skin. So they said you basically put it in a sling, you monitor it, you take x-rays every so often, and just, watch its recovery. Otherwise you'd have to do surgery and put plates in there and stuff like that.
How are you feeling now?
I feel okay, depending on, sometimes I feel like a little discomfort there. If you see what you're looking at there, it didn't heal. The bones never move back. What happens is just like a piece of bone grows and connects those two pieces that are broken.
The body's an amazing
depending on the
thing.
weather and what I'm doing, I feel it sometimes, but overall, it's not bad.
Ew. That's the picture of your injury?
Yeah, that was the day. Actually, there's a date on there. It was like several days after the injury.
Yeah. All right. Did you ever bring the bicycle to Mr. Craig to take a look at it?
I did. He basically took the bicycle, took it into the back again, tightened up something on the rear, got on the bicycle himself. The store is relatively small. Rode about 10 feet to his front door and back, and said the bicycle is fine.
Okay. And what did you do?
And I said, it's not acceptable for me, because this would be the third time that you told me the bicycle is fine. The second time resulted in a pretty bad accident on my part. And I explained to him, I was still in a sling at that point. I said, I don't care who repairs this bicycle, especially you. I don't want this bicycle anymore. And I would like to be compensated for my medical expenses, which I feel were as a result of, his lack of proper repair on my bicycle.
Let me hear from you, Mr. Craig. Do you remember seeing the bicycle?
I remember seeing it the first time, as he said, when he took it out, and then came back immediately. We took care of it. From that point on, I do not remember seeing the bike. I do remember him coming back into the store. Maybe it was November. He has the date more than I do, saying that, he fell off the bike and he got injured. I said to him, bring the bike in, let my mechanics look at it. And, he kind of was talking about compensation. I said, well, bring the bike in. I said, let my mechanics have been on the job for 40 years. I got two of them. And I said, let me look over the whole thing and see what the situation is. So that was the last I saw of him.
So you don't remember looking at the bike the last time?
No, and I don't remember riding it, to be quite honest with you. I mean,
what is this a picture of, Mr. Stefanos?
That is a picture of the component that was replaced. So you see that plastic cap there and the threaded rod, that was the skewer. And after my accident, I didn't touch it. This is how I found it. And you can see it's loose there. Mm-hmm. Right. And then that's the other side of the same component. You see how it's not in the right position, the right resting position. Mm-hmm. That's the inner part of the frame, and that's the rear tire where it made contact and binded up against the frame. You see the rubber marks there? That's not normal for a rear tire, of course.
What can we tell from looking at these pictures, Mr. Craig?
Well, it looks like the quick release loosened up. I just want to show you something here. I have it in front of me.
Oh, there we go.
This is a quick release wheel, okay? And this is the lever, okay, that has to be closed fully for the wheel to be secured to the bike. If this lever in any way gets compromised, even a little bit like that, okay, and you put pressure on it, as he did, the wheel will shift.
Pressure on what? He put pressure on the pedal.
Yeah, when you start pedaling hard, if you're going up an incline, if you're going up a hill, and this lever is compromised open just a little bit, the wheel's going to shift. Now, quick releases are made to make it convenient for people to transport their bikes. They don't need a wrench to take the wheel off. You want to throw your bike in a car or something like that, and you pop the wheel off. Two things I've been telling people for 50 years with my customers. Two things you check before you get on a bike. Your air pressure, so it doesn't damage the rim, and make sure your quick releases are closed, because it doesn't take much to open them. This can be a little compromised by taking the bike out of the car if it hits the trunk lid or something like that. If you have it in the garage with other bikes and another bike gets next to it, the pedal can open it. You know, if it pushes against it, it can just, you don't have to open it all the way. You'll open it all the way to get the wheel out. But if you open it just a little bit, then that weakens the contact, which is the way it is. So, you know, it's
If the
it's a
quick
variable
release
that-
is a little open, okay, keep that in my vision. If the quick
sorry.
release is a little open, what happens when you step hard on the pedal?
it could sway the wheel. The wheel could move. If it's not, like, in other words, it's got to be closed all the way.
Because that's like
If it's
that acts as a lock?
Well, it's a cam. So when you have it locked like that all the way down, it's on there good and solid. If it's opened a little bit, this opens it all the way to take the wheel off the bike. But if it's open just a little bit like that, then the contact is compromised.
Here's my
Okay,
question. So when you're riding, wouldn't you know if that had been open?
If it's open just a little bit, it might not happen for a mile. It might only happen if you're putting a lot of torque on the pedal. If you're like going uphill, putting a lot of pressure on. But if it's not checked and it's open like that, then that could happen.
I'm concerned about the fact that he had to bring it back because something was wrong after the first time. I'm concerned about that. So what was it that you did? What did you tighten that obviously got loose while he was riding?
As I recall, the quick release was tightened, which was...
Well, what was it you tightened when he came back the same day that he picked it up the first time?
The first time he came back, the wheel, like I said, I threw it on my rack in the back and I double checked the quick release to make sure it was tight. Okay. It seemed okay from what I recall, but I just double checked that. I really put a lot of torque on it, a lot of my hand pressure on it, and I closed it. And off he went. Now, as he said, he rode home okay with it, and it seemed to be okay riding home. But then he stored the bike, and I don't know, 4 or 5 days later, he rode it. And
so other than the quick release being loose, what else could account for the accident he described?
A broken axle, but that axle was not broken. So that would be that's the only way to
What
wheel
is
shift.
this? Why is the tire rubbing against the side like that in this picture?
Because the quick release somehow, some way, as I said, got compromised. Excuse me. And then with pressure on the wheel, that shifted it.
And then what is this that I'm looking at that he wanted me to note, that black cap that's separate? What is that?
That's the other end of the quick release. I have it here. See this piece here on this? I don't know if you can see this black cap here. Here, if you want, I'll just take it. I'll show it to you.
Yeah.
It's I'll take the wheel out of here. Hold on.
Did this have anything to do with the repair that you guys did?
Well, we put a derailleur and a chain on. This is the skewer. You see this here? You stick it through the wheel. The axle's hollow, and then one side goes on the other side, and then you just lock it in on the wheel.
Was there anything faulty about the quick release itself? Like, was it not?
No. For 50 years, I tell people, before you get on your bike, check your tires and check your quick releases to make sure they're closed. Because if they're opened a little bit and you start riding, you may ride 5-10 blocks, it'll be fine. But if you come to a hill, as he did or something, and put some pressure on the pedal with this open, the wheel can shift.
Did you ever take the bike, Mr. Stefanos, to any other bike expert to ask them, what do you think went wrong? Is that even a possibility, or you didn't do that?
Yeah, I did not.
People fall for different reasons when they're riding bikes. You've got to be able to prove to me by a preponderance of the evidence, when you have the burden of proof as the plaintiff in a lawsuit, that it happened as a result of their negligence. I realized that you had the bike repaired there, but everything he's saying makes so much sense to me.
So the skewer, the component that Craig shared with you is the rod in between the two nuts, right? Which was replaced.
Was that replaced?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So is it possible that, so his argument is, I didn't do anything to open it. It was a defective skewer. So what's your response to that? There's someone making a lot of noise in the background of one of your places. Can you stop whoever it is? Is it a dog or is it?
It sounds like lapping up water.
My dog was drinking.
Oh, you let that dog go, honey. Don't worry about that.
My wife removed him.
No. Oh, no. Give the dog the water. I'm sorry I said anything. All right.
110-pound yellow lab.
Yeah, it needs its hydration. All right. So is there something that can be faulty in the skewer that it's loose?
No. We sell thousands of them. And, this is what I'm holding it. It's a standard bicycle part.
So the accident he describes happens only if it's open, and it opens because someone opened it by accident.
Yeah, as I said, it's a variable. I've even in the store when we pack repairs against each other, and I pull out a bike, sometimes they get intertwined with each other, and it'll open it up. It doesn't take much. We put your bike in. People put their bikes in storage rooms around my way.
Where did you guys go bike riding that day? Had your bike been in a trunk?
House, just a quick ride after work. And my
Did you have the skewer inspected by someone who can say that there was something defective about it?
I don't think there was anything wrong with it. I think it was poor workmanship on
How?
the installation.
He doesn't make that. That's a piece that he comes and puts in, and they just put it in. What evidence do you have that there was poor workmanship? It's far more likely that it opened.
My evidence is that I had to go back immediately because he didn't tighten it properly.
All right, Mr. Stefanos, people prove the kind of case you're trying to prove in many different ways, but most time it involves expert testimony. The fact that you had to go back one time for that to be closed is not expert testimony. It might be evidence that you hit it when you're riding your bike. I have no idea what it's evidence of. But when you tell me you're on a bike ride with your family and you're enjoying it and everything's fine and everything is great, and the only time something happens is when you put torque when you press hard because you're going up a hill, and he tells me, well, that's exactly what happens when you do that and the thing is open. And the thing is meant to open and close. It's not like it's defective that the thing got open. I am not finding sufficient evidence to turn around and tell him you owe him $1,902. My verdict in this case is for the defendant.
Mr. Stefanos, what are you thinking right now?
I think it's very clear that if somebody doesn't fix something the first time and days later that part fails again, we know who's negligent.
Do you understand what she meant when she said you just didn't have enough evidence to prove your case against him? That's the key.
Yes.
What do you think?
Yeah.
I mean, if you'd had expert testimony or someone else coming in that could help prove the case for you, maybe that would have helped. But you just didn't have the ammunition. So, well, I'm sorry about that, but that's the judge's rule, and you got to live by it. Mr. Craig, I know he's upset. Obviously, he was suing you for almost $2,000. I would think you feel much better now, right? Even though he is a good customer of yours, has been.
Right. That's the fault. That's the part I don't like about it. I mean, we've been in business for over 60 years, and we have a lot of repeat customers, and I'm sorry you had a problem.
Have you ever had other people sue you for medical damages, claiming, you're at fault for their falling off their bike?
Never.
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 Yeah. Interesting. Really interesting. Well, congratulations, sir. You have prevailed in this case, and you do not owe him any money.
Thank you.
And that'll do it for this case. Harvey, what do you think?
If you have a lawsuit that involves something technical beyond you, you got to get an expert. And if you don't, even an expert in writing, you're going to lose.
Has anyone in your family ever gotten COVID?
Yeah, I'm going to.
You haven't.
I have not. I really thought I had, but PCRs just keep coming back negative.
Right.
Two of my three children got it even though they were fully vaccinated, double vaccinated.
The littlest and
the littlest and
oldest.
The oldest. The middle one, I'm convinced she had it in January of 2020 because I've never seen anybody more sick from a pulmonary standpoint. And she didn't have. We tested her for the antibodies when that became available, and she didn't have them. So it's just wrong.
You and I have been mostly pretty careful.
I don't know. What I find is that everybody has a very different definition of careful. People think they're careful, and then they get judgy about someone else's behavior. And then I hear, I'll hear what they did, and I'm like, oh, you got, everyone's careful till they're not. But my great worry was always my 96-year-old mother. Right. And so I made everybody we've all been very good around my mother. Right. We get together once a week for lunch, and we had 3 different tables in a back patio. We had the space for that. We had the weather for that. Actually, it was really hot.
And your mom would ask every 30 seconds, why are you wearing
what is that
masks?
on your face?
Why
are you wearing that?
Take that off.
Why are you wearing that? Because there's a pandemic. Where in the world, Mom, there's a pandemic? But nobody's sick in this house. No, Mom, but old people really shouldn't get it. Who's old? That was it was like an Abbott and Costello routine every day for a solid year.
So that'll do it for this session of the People's Court. We will see you next time.